The wind moved slowly across the red desert. The sky above was pale and lifeless. Heat waves rose from the old metal tracks that ran through the sand, tracks that hadn't carried a train in years. But today, something had changed. A long, heavy train was coming. It groaned and roared across the rails like a beast waking from a long sleep. Rusty, loud, and unstoppable. And ahead of it, someone was lying on the tracks. Jiraiya, a silver-skinned alien woman, opened her eyes slowly. Her body ached. Her head was spinning. Chains dug deep into her wrists and ankles, locking her to the rails. She tried to move, but pain shot through. Her chest, her mouth was dry, her lips cracked. Her once beautiful robe was torn and dirty. Around her neck, a broken diplomatic pendant swung, the last piece of her old life. Her voice was weak. No, not like this. She remembered how she got here. Her own people, once proud and noble, had betrayed her. She had spoken in defense of humans. She had tried to stop the war. For that, they called her a traitor. Now they had chained her here, to die in the desert, forgotten, alone. The metal beneath her began to shake. Her eyes widened. A train, a real train, was coming. Jiraiya pulled at the chains, panic rising. She screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the wind. No, please. Miles away, a man rode a small desert skimmer across the dunes. His name was Dane Ryler, a former human engineer, now a drifter, searching old war zones for scrap and spare tech. His scanner beeped. Heat signature? He muttered. He adjusted his goggles and looked toward the horizon. Smoke. Then he heard it. The low rumble of an old train engine. That can't be right. Nothing runs here anymore. He turned his skimmer and sped toward the noise. The train thundered closer. Jiraiya struggled. Her arms were bleeding from the chains. Tears mixed with sand on her cheeks. She had tried to save others, and this was her reward. As the shadow of the train grew larger, she whispered one last time, I don't want to die. Dane's skimmer flew over the final dune, and he saw her, a figure chained to the tracks, the train less than a minute away. No. He jumped off the skimmer before it stopped, rolled across the sand, and ran at full speed toward the tracks. The wind roared. The ground shook. Jiraiya turned her head, and for the first time saw a human running toward her, a real human. Her heart raced. Was he here to help? Or finish the job? Dane reached her and dropped to his knees. He saw the chains. Hold on, he shouted. She looked at him, barely able to speak. Go. Run. He ignored her and pulled a cutting torch from his bag. He lit it and aimed it. At the chain, sparks flew. The heat was intense. The train horn screamed, and loud, angry, close. Just a few more seconds. Dane said, his hands steady, eyes locked on the chain. The metal glowed red. Then, snap! The chain broke. He tossed the torch aside, lifted Jiraiya into his arms, and ran with all his strength. The train roared past just behind them. Dust, wind, and fire flying in every direction. They hit the ground hard, but alive. Jiraiya coughed and looked up at him. You saved me? Dane nodded, catching his breath. Yeah, you looked like you needed it. Why? She whispered. He looked at her with tired, honest eyes. Because no one else did. Jiraiya lay still, her body weak but her heart pounding. She had expected death, but found a human instead. Not with weapons, not with hate, but with courage. The desert wind slowed, and for the first time in days, she felt hope. The desert sun hung, low in the sky, burning like a dying star. Dane Ryler dragged a metal sled through the sand, pulling Jiraiya's weak body behind him. He had wrapped her in a thermal cloak and laid her gently across the frame of his scavenger skimmer. She didn't speak. Her eyes were half closed, her skin dry and cracked from exposure. The heat had not been kind. Dane walked ahead, head down, every step slow but steady. Behind them, the train tracks stretched like scars through the dunes. After nearly 2 hours, a rocky hill appeared in the distance. a small cave Dane had once used as shelter. He pushed harder, ignoring the pain in his legs. When they finally reached the entrance, he stopped and took a deep breath. We made it. Jiraiya didn't respond. He pulled her inside the shade of the cave, opened a metal crate, and lit a small fire using a broken energy cell and old wire. Sparks danced in the dark. He checked her pulse, still beating, faint, but alive. She opened her eyes as the warmth touched her face. Dane handed her a water tube. Sip slowly. Jiraiya stared at it, then at him. Her lips trembled. I don't understand you. I get that a lot, Dane said with a tired smile. She took a tiny sip. It felt like fire at first, then relief. Her voice came weakly. You're a human. Dane nodded. Last I checked. She looked away. They told us humans were cruel. Dane sat near the fire and tossed more wire in. And they told us aliens were monsters. Silence. Then he said, maybe they lied to both of us. Jiraiya pulled the cloak tighter around her shoulders. Why did you help me? Dane looked into the flames. I've seen too many people left behind. Soldiers, refugees, even kids. He paused. My brother was left behind too. I swore I wouldn't do the same. Jiraiya studied him. I was supposed to die. You still might, he said, but not today. She looked down. Her voice cracked. They chained me for speaking the truth. I tried to stop the war. I told them the humans weren't the enemy. My council didn't agree. She clenched her fists. They said my voice was dangerous. Outside, the wind picked up, blowing harder now. Dane walked to the cave's edge and squinted into the sand. Storm's coming, he said. Big one. Jiraiya shivered. We should move? Dane shook his head. No. We stay here until it passes. You're not strong enough to run yet. She hesitated, then asked softly, why do you care? He turned to face her. Because someone should. As the sandstorm howled outside, the two sat in the warm glow of the flickering fire. Jiraiya's breathing grew easier. Her shoulders relaxed. The fear in her eyes softened, just a little. Then she asked, what's your name? Dane. She nodded slowly. I am Jiraiya, last of the Ivory Council. He gave a small salute. Pleasure to meet you, Jiraiya. I think we're both a little last. Suddenly, a low buzzing sound echoed in the cave. Dane froze. He grabbed his scanner. The screen flickered. A signal had been picked up. Something's nearby, he whispered. Jiraiya sat up straighter. They must have activated the tracking beacon when I was chained. Dane looked at her. You're marked? Jiraiya nodded. A tiny tag under the skin. I couldn't remove it. Dane grabbed his pack and pulled out a knife. I can. Moments. Later, Jiraiya gritted her teeth as Dane carefully made a small cut in her upper arm. She didn't scream. She didn't flinch. The tiny chip was pulled out and dropped into the fire. It sparked once, then melted. The scanner went dark. They won't find us here, he said. Jiraiya looked at him. For the first time, her eyes didn't show fear. They showed trust. But outside the storm, in the sky above the desert, a silent drone hovered. Its single red eye blinked once, then turned toward the hills. The storm passed in the night, leaving behind still air and soft sand. Morning light pushed gently into the cave where Dane and Jiraiya rested. The fire was now cold. Only ashes remained. Jiraiya sat near the wall, watching Dane as he slept. His arms crossed, face calm, body slightly curled as if he had been guarding something even in his dreams. She looked at the small scar on her arm, where he had removed the tracker. She touched it gently. No chains. No noise, just silence. But something about the silence didn't feel safe. Far above the desert, a small black drone floated through the air, silent as shadow. It didn't beep, It didn't flash. Its single red eye scanned for heat, for movement, for life. It had received the last signal from Jariah's tracker just before it melted, and now it was hunting. Dane woke up and sat up fast. Jariah smiled faintly. "You sleep like a warrior." He rubbed his eyes. "I dream like one too. Explosions, sand, people yelling." She tilted her head. "That sounds like reality." He chuckled. "Too real." He grabbed his scanner and checked the surroundings. Nothing. Clear sky. Flat heat. But something in his gut felt wrong. He stood and stretched. "We need to move." Jariah frowned. "I thought the signal was gone?" "Yeah," he said, "but they don't always need a signal." She nodded slowly. "Then we move, together." Dane packed the gear. Jariah helped, her hands still shaky but stronger than before. They stepped out of the cave and into the sun. The desert stretched wide, endless hills of red sand and dry wind. "Where to?" she asked. "There's an old water station 20 clicks east," Dane replied. "If the solar panels still work, we can recharge the skimmer and send a signal." Signal? She paused. "To who?" Dane looked at her. "To anyone who's still listening." They walked for hours, their boots pressing light prints into the sand. Jariah asked questions about Earth, about the war, about Dane's life before he became a drifter. He answered simply. "I fix things," he said. "Machines, engines, people if I can." She stopped for a second. "No one ever tried to fix me." He turned and looked her in the eyes. "I'm trying now." She looked away, but her cheeks warmed. Over a ridge they finally saw it. A tall rusted tower with solar wings bent from storms. Beneath it a small half-buried shelter. Dane grinned. "Still standing." Jariah smiled too. "You humans build ugly things, but strong." They reached the shelter and stepped inside. It smelled of oil and dust. He powered on the terminal that blinked to life. "Still breathing," he said. But at that same moment, the scanner on his wrist blinked red. Heat contact. Above. He froze. Jariah stepped closer. "What is it?" Dane looked up through the cracked ceiling. A small shadow moved across the sun. "A drone," he whispered. Outside, the drone hovered silently above the shelter. Its red eye zoomed in on the entrance. "Target. Jariah. Confirmed. Status. Kill or capture." Dane grabbed a pulse grenade from his bag. He looked at Jariah. "You stay here." "No," she said firmly. "If they get you, they get me anyway." He didn't argue. Instead, he opened the hatch and climbed to the roof. The drone spotted him immediately and fired. A sharp blue beam cut the air. Dane rolled left, barely dodging. He threw the grenade upward. Boom! The drone jolted but didn't fall. "Too armored," he shouted. Jariah appeared at the edge, raising a small silver cube. A memory flare. She pressed it. A soft sound spread into the air, a tone only certain machines could hear. The drone paused, confused, disoriented. Dane didn't wait. He pulled a metal rod from the solar frame and launched it like a spear. It hit the drones. Weak spot. Sparks flew. Crash. The drone fell hard into the sand, smoke rising from its side. Dane looked at Jariah. "Where did you learn that trick?" She gave a small smirk. "I used to control machines before they tried to control me." Back inside the shelter, Dane checked the drone remains. "Too advanced for scouts," he said. "This was a hunter," Jariah whispered. "Then more are coming." Dane looked out at the open desert. "We have to reach the vault." Jariah nodded. "Then let's not stop again." But as they prepared to leave, a red light blinked deep inside the drone wreckage. Secondary beacon activated. Far, beyond the desert in deep space, a stealth ship turned toward the signal. The desert sun was cruel, but the wind was kind. It pushed gently behind Dane and Jariah as they moved across the sand. The destroyed drone lay far behind them, now just a smoking shell. But Jariah's mind was not on the past. It was on something buried. Dane walked beside her, his eyes scanning the horizon. "You've been quiet," he said. She nodded slowly. "Because I'm afraid of what happens next." He raised an eyebrow. "What's next?" She looked at him, her voice soft. "Go to the vault." They stopped under a rocky archway where the desert dipped downward. The sand here was different, smoother as if untouched by storms. Jariah walked ahead and placed her hand on a stone wall. A symbol glowed beneath her touch, faint and blue. Dane stepped forward. "What is this place?" She turned to him. "This is where the war began. And maybe where it can end." Jariah walked slowly toward a circular stone in the ground. "My ancestors left memories here, not in books, but in light and song. They called it the Core Vault. It holds proof that my people started the war, not yours." Dane stood still. "You want to show that to the galaxy?" She looked back. "It's the only way to stop it." Jariah knelt and began humming a soft, ancient tone. The sand around the circle trembled. The stone lowered, revealing a spiral stair going underground. Light came from the walls, not wires or bulbs, but glowing vines that pulsed like they were breathing. Dane followed her down, hand on his weapon, eyes wide. "This place feels alive," she nodded. "It remembers." At the bottom, they entered a round room with a crystal in the center. Jariah approached it and placed her hand on it. The crystal lit up, showing moving images in the air. Dane watched in shock, alien leaders shaking hands with human officers. Secret meeting. One alien leader pressing a silent button under the table. A virus released. Humans blamed. It was all recorded. All real. Dane whispered. "They framed us." Jariah's voice shook, and I spoke out so they'd chain me to the tracks. He looked at her with new respect and deep sadness. "You carried all this alone?" She nodded. "I had to." "No, you didn't," he said firmly. "Not anymore." Suddenly the lights dimmed. Jariah looked around. "They've found us." Dane ran to the stairway. Outside, a shadow passed over the sand. A stealth ship had arrived. Dane turned to Jariah. "Can we take the recording with us?" She opened a small side panel and pulled out a glowing data core, the size of an apple. "This is it," she said. "Then let's move." But as they turned to run, a shock pulse blasted through the vault. The ceiling cracked. Dust fell. Dane covered Jariah with his body. He shouted, "Go! I'll hold them!" But Jariah stood tall. No more running. As they climbed out of the vault, they saw figures landing from the ship, black-armored, armed, and silent. Jariah clutched the data core tightly. "We have what they fear." Dane raised his blaster. "Then let's make them earn it." Sand blew across the ruins of the vault as Dane and Jariah stood back to back, her holding the glowing data core, him holding a blaster that was almost out of charge. Above them, the black stealth ship hovered, silent and heavy, like a shadow that had weight. Then the ground shook. Troopers dropped from the sky, silent black armor, no voices, no mercy. Jariah ran, clutching the memory core to her chest. Dane turned and fired. 2 quick blasts dropped the first pair of soldiers. But there were too many. A sharp pulse struck Dane's side. He fell, coughing in pain. Jariah screamed and tried to return, but cold metal arms grabbed her. She kicked, screamed, fought. "Dane!" He lifted his head just enough to see her dragged into the ship, her voice fading. Then, the doors closed. The ship vanished. Silence. Dane lay in the sand, bleeding, breathing slowly. Not dead, but almost broken. He looked at the sky and whispered, "Not again." Not again would he let someone be taken while he lay helpless. He pushed himself up inch by inch and crawled to the vault. Inside, the lights flickered weakly, but something still pulsed in the crystal base. Energy. He reached for it, pulled the last shard from the system. Jiraiya had taken the truth, but Dane still had a piece of its fire. He stood. He would find her. He would bring her back. No matter what. Meanwhile, on the stealth ship, Jiraiya sat in a cold glass cell. The lights above buzzed. The walls shimmered. A voice came from a speaker. Flat, lifeless. You will give us the data. Jiraiya didn't move. You were warned once. There won't be a second. She looked up, eyes glowing with defiance. You can chain me again. But not my heart. Back in the desert, Dane stitched his wound and powered up his skimmer. He opened an old crate marked Do Not Use. Inside was his brother's gear, recon cloak, magnetic boots, and a locator spike. Dane loaded everything, then turned on the last screen. The vault crystal blinked and showed a faint trace. Jiraiya's location. He whispered, I'm coming, and hit the throttle. 3 hours later, under cover of night, Dane reached a hidden base carved into a canyon wall. No visible doors, no guards outside. Too quiet. Perfect for a prison. He used the recon cloak to walk unseen through the sand, found a ventilation shaft, and entered the darkness. Inside, Jiraiya sat alone. The voice returned. Last chance. Surrender the core's encryption. Jiraiya closed her eyes. I'd rather die with the truth than live with your lie. The lights flashed red. Then you die. The wall slid open. 2 guards stepped in, but before they could touch her, the power died. Darkness fell. Then came the sound of metal breaking, a flash of light, a pulse blast, and then his voice. Jiraiya. Time to go. She opened her eyes. Dane stood at the door, bruised, burnt, and grinning. You, she gasped. He held out his hand. I told you. I fixed things. She grabbed it. They ran. In the hallway, alarms rang. More guards came. Jiraiya tossed the crystal fire shard to Dane. He threw it like a grenade. Boom! A wall of heat and light exploded behind them. They reached the exit, climbed the vent, and jumped into the skimmer. Dane fired it up. Jiraiya held on tight. The base collapsed behind them, but they didn't look back. They sped into the night, stars above them. Wind in their faces. He looked at her. You good? She nodded. You came for me, she whispered. Always, he replied. And, for the first time, she smiled without pain. The night sky roared with wind as Dane and Jiraiya raced across the desert in the stolen skimmer. Behind them, the enemy base burned. Ahead, a metal monster waited, a long black hover train used by the enemy to carry tech, prisoners, and weapons across planets. It wasn't just transport, it was a weapon on rails, and tonight, Dane planned to steal it. The skimmer slid to a stop near the last car of the train. It was resting at a fuel depot, silent but not for long. Dane adjusted his gear. We get on, we take control, and we ride it till the signal's strong enough. Jiraiya held the glowing data core in her hands. I just need one chance, she said. A clean signal, a tall tower, and the galaxy will know the truth. Dane smirked. Then let's make it loud. They climbed the rear ladder and slipped. Inside the cargo car, dark, quiet, empty. Then, a sudden hiss. Jiraiya froze. Movement. Dane pulled his blaster. From the shadows, a guard stepped out, helmeted, armed. Before he could raise his weapon, Jiraiya pressed 2 fingers to her temple and whispered a tone. The lights flickered. The guard staggered. Dane fired once. Down. Jiraiya looked at him. I didn't kill him. Dane nodded. Neither did I. They moved forward. Car by car, they advanced, through crates of weapons, cages with broken locks, and silent machines humming with forgotten energy. Then they reached the control room. Dane hacked the panel. Jiraiya set the data core into the comm socket. The train came alive. Engines roared. Lights flared. The Iron Beast had awakened. and now it belonged to them. The train began moving, slowly, then faster. Sand kicked up behind the magnetic rails as they flew across the desert. Dane gripped the control stick. "We're flying blind." Jiraiya stood at the center console, hands dancing over symbols. "Comms tower in 30 miles. It's old, but if I amplify the signal..." Suddenly, the console screamed. "Warning. Unauthorized control detected." A voice came through the train system. "Give up the train, or be destroyed." Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. "Let them come." In orbit, enemy ships turned. A stealth cruiser launched pursuit craft. In the distance, flying shadows appeared. Hunter ships, engines glowing red. Dane looked at Jiraiya. "We've got company," she replied. "I've got the message ready." The train flew through canyons, lightning storms, and shattered ruins of old war sites. Dane used the train's cannons to shoot down 2 hunter ships. Jiraiya began transmitting. Holograms lit up in space. Screens across starships blinked, and the truth began to play. Alien leaders framing humans. Secret recordings of the betrayal. Jiraiya's warning. Her being chained for speaking out. Planet by planet, ship by ship. The truth reached them all. Enemy forces panicked. All they could do now was stop the train. They fired on the rails. Ahead, a section exploded. Jiraiya screamed, "Tracks are gone." Dane didn't flinch. "Then we jump." He grabbed the core. She grabbed his hand. They ran to the rear car. The ground raced below. 3, 2, 1. They jumped. The hover train flew off the broken track and exploded in the canyon below. A wave of heat roared past them, but they were alive. Jiraiya lay in the sand, coughing, holding the core close to her chest. Dane groaned beside her, but grinned. That was one hell of a ride. She laughed, tired, bruised, but free. And now, they know. Far above, hundreds of beacons began to blink. Ships turned, alliances shifted. The galaxy had heard her voice. The stars above were no longer quiet. For the first time in years, every channel, every satellite, and every encrypted comm line buzzed with the same voice. Jiraiya's voice. They tried to silence me. They tried to erase the truth. But one, human, refused to look away. And now, the galaxy sees. Across distant worlds, beings of every race watched the broadcast. On human stations, officers wept in silence. In alien chambers, leaders turned to each other, some in shame, others in fear. Armies paused, fleets stopped mid-flight. Peace didn't arrive with guns. It arrived with a broken voice and a stolen train. Deep in the desert, beneath the burning sky, Jiraiya and Dane stood beside the wreckage of the hover train. The data core in her hand pulsed faintly. Mission complete. Dane leaned against a rock, bruised but smiling. "Think anyone heard us?" Jiraiya looked up at the sky. Dozens of blinking lights were falling toward them. Ships, big ones. Everyone did. Minutes later, a human rescue ship landed gently near them. The side door opened. Captain Rin, a strong woman in white armor, stepped out. She looked at Dane, eyes wide. "You're alive? We thought you vanished 2 years ago." Dane shrugged. "Took a detour." She turned to Jiraiya, then slowly saluted. "Your voice started something we couldn't." Jiraiya nodded. "My people may never forgive me, but I didn't speak for forgiveness. I spoke for the forgotten." Inside the ship, medics treated Dane's wounds while Jiraiya sat by the window, watching the desert disappear below. Captain Rin approached her. "The council wants to meet you. They're not used to being proven wrong." Jiraiya replied calmly, "Then it's time they listen." Back on Earth, at the Grand Assembly, thousands gathered, humans, aliens, diplomats, soldiers, farmers, refugees. And on the giant screen, at the front, Jiraiya walked forward, hand in hand with Dane. She held no weapons, no crown, only a small pendant, once broken, now whole again. She stood before them, no longer chained. She spoke. "You taught us fear, But he taught me hope. One human saved a voice, and that voice saved a galaxy. I was left on the tracks, but I chose to stand. The crowd stood in silence. Then someone clapped, then another, then thousands. Applause like thunder, tears like rain. Weeks later, in a green valley outside the city, a small building stood. Not a palace, not a base, just a sanctuary, with a symbol carved on the door, a broken chain, a rising flame. Inside, Jiraiya taught young minds, alien and human, how to speak, how to question, how to protect the truth. And Dane, he fixed engines, planted trees, and told stories to anyone who'd listen, especially the one about a woman, on the tracks, and the man who wouldn't let her die there. Final lines. One voice shook the stars, one heart held the line, and together, they turned chains into bridges,